I said I was. I said that my the look of my face is unfortunate. The lower lip being too large, the upper lip being too small. I don't think it's unfortunate if I crossbreeded with um, a young African American woman, hypothetically here and there. That's not unfortunate, but it's unfortunate that my upper lip is so disproportionately small and my lower lip is so disproportionately large. Now, I've got a little bit of extra fat from my slow metabolism. I'm getting fatter. And then I also use some nicotine pouches that might have caused a little bit of cellular damage on my lower lip. So maybe my lower lip would not look as big. It certainly didn't look as big when I was 20. But, well, you can see people of all races, they get older and their lips get, and their face gets kind of puffy and droopy. As they get older, their face gets puffy and droopy. And there's a little bit of that effect happening at the age of 50. So, no, it's not unfortunate. I think it's not unfortunate, but my jaw's not big. My jaw's too small. And so, if I was crossbreeded with a Northern European woman, you would see that her eye color is almost maintained. If she has blue eyes, really blue, like a sapphire blue eye color, and she crossbreeds with me, her eye color will be halfway between gray and blue. So she will have almost maintained her eye color, blue-gray, not quite blue, but not gray. My eyes are gray with a tint of blue. So if I crossbreeded with a Northern European woman who has a light eye color, well, she wouldn't lose that entirely. But if she crossbreeded with, say, a Mediterranean man who has a dark eye color, then her eye color would be dark, and her hair color would be dark, and her complexion would be darker too. So you don't see the best of my features if I crossbreed with an African woman. I'm attracted to some African women, and I admire them. But you don't see, okay, if you take another guy and crossbreed him with an African woman, and then you'd crossbreed me with that same African woman, that other guy has a more handsome, better looking face. But we're both going to lose the eye color. The descendants are going to both lose they're going to lose my eye color. Okay. They're going to have a dark eye color and they're going to have a dark complexion. So they're going to have a smaller cranium. The brain volume is going to be smaller. So my brain volume is in the upper percentile, like the rarest, highest brain volume. And when I am crossbreeding with people, you could see there's I don't want to say an improvement, but there's an enhancement of the brain volume. There's reasons why sometimes a lower brain volume can be useful. It's harder to punch a guy out. If he's got a smaller brain volume, he can be more resistant to a beating. And he can also, a man with a smaller brain volume, let's say he's 6 feet tall and he's got a smaller brain volume, he can run a faster 10 kilometers. Because he doesn't have to supply that brain with circulation, because his a large brain, he doesn't have to supply a large brain with circulation, so his heart can do more work for the rest of his body. So with a large brain size like this, you're not going to win a 10-kilometer race against a man with a more athletic body and a smaller brain volume. So it doesn't matter if you have a equally strong legs and a big pair of lungs and a strong heart. But if you also have an extra large brain volume, you're not going to win that 10-kilometer race, and you're not going to win the marathon. Lugging that big brain that's using so much, the big brain metabolism using so much of your circulation, that it's depriving the efficiency of the body running the 10-kilometer or the marathon. And also the big brain is not as resistant to a hard punch. So there are advantages to having a smaller brain. Not everybody has to have a larger brain. It's not a requirement. Maybe evolution is gradually trending in that direction, but it doesn't make life pointless. And so if you have a smaller brain, it's not pointless. It's life is meaningful in all the ways that we consider ourselves to be human. Unless your brain is like as small as a fist, a real small brain, the size of a smaller mammal's brain, like a four-legged mammal brain. Well, if your brain is really, really, really tiny, then you're not even going to be able to speak a sentence. You won't even be able to speak, I guess. I've actually never seen people whose brains are that small, but there are people who have a very small brain, and maybe they can speak. They have the mouth and the face, the forward-facing eyeballs, the binocular vision is what that's called, and then they have the mouth that can form words. And if they have a very small brain, I've never seen these people brought out for publicity, but when a woman with a small brain crossbreeds with a man with a large brain, you can see a drastic enhancement in the size of the brain in the next generation. And people don't think about that brain size until you see that one person with a large brain, usually the man, crossbreeds with a woman, and if she has a small brain, you see a drastic enhancement of her brain size. Well, my face doesn't look good, but there's women whose faces look good, but their brain isn't very big. And some of them look very fine and are very charismatic and wonderful women. And I looked at one of these women and fell in love with her, and she was from Brazil. And she didn't fall in love with me. Maybe she did later, but I don't know. I can't confirm it, but she didn't choose me first. And if she chose me later, well, I haven't got the confirmation of that. But I hadn't really thought much about brain size, and I just thought, gosh, my head looks so big and ugly. And that's all I thought about it, because I had not yet begun to accomplish any intellectual accomplishments that were very noteworthy. So then I just thought, wow, her face looks beautiful, but I didn't look above her eyebrows. And well, I did. If I looked and I bothered to look, I would say, well, she looks good. She doesn't have a big, ugly forehead. But she's also not the most cognitive, but she's beautiful. So anyway, great face and great body. And that's a good partner, hypothetically, a breeding partner for me, so that people could see if I breed with such a woman, there's a child who has a better looking face than my face, which is ugly, and then a larger brain volume. Unfortunately, the baldness is an undesirable trait. So there's a certain type of woman who does not need me because she already has a large brain volume, and these are rare women. If a woman has a brain volume equally as large, her father, her brother, her son, let's say her brothers having, her siblings, male siblings having an equally large brain volume as me, that's a rare woman, because my brain is really, really big. So there are some out there. I know there are, and they're in Northern Europe. And I met some who had a large brain volume recently, and I was pleased to see these Europeans who were visiting. And I want to go to Northern Europe again, but Northern European women might not be as attracted to me if they have a great brain volume and a perfect face, they're going to look at my face and say, well, you've got their brain, but your hair is missing and your face is, well, deficient. They wouldn't say that, but that maybe they should say that. That's what they're going to be thinking. Your face is deficient, your brain volume is good, in fact, excellent brain volume, but no hair on top. So those women are not necessarily going to be inclined to choose me unless I could say, well, please don't be so superficial, or you're being very shallow. You should think of my achievements as a man. I'm not only objectifying me, and think about the things that I've achieved. Think about my struggle and the great things that I want to accomplish. And maybe you can find it in your heart to breed with me to enhance my prestige, to help me accomplish these goals. But one thing's for sure, the children will not look as good as you. Yeah, I haven't got much eyebrows and bald and fishy looking lips, I guess. Well, I think someone compared my mouth to a cod. I think maybe this is a type of a fish that has the lower lip larger. A lot of fish have the lower lip larger than their upper lip. So maybe the African Americans also could say the same thing. Yeah, he has lips like a cod, I guess. I'm not a fisherman. But I've got a great big brain, and I'm really pleased with the achievements of my intellectual achievements from the age of 40 to 50. So it turns out I don't look at my brain and say, that is so ugly. I say, well, the forehead is rough looking, the skin texture, and it's a little bit bumpy looking, and I've got bad skin, thin skin like a tomato. And I don't have that nice smooth look to my head. People with African heritage usually have a smoother skin. I have sort of a rough looking texture. Anyway, but the brain volume is good, and I no longer look at my head and say, oh, I wish it was not so, I wish it was flatter and smaller, bring it down some, smaller and all this, because I've got nothing else going for me other than cognitive achievements. So anyway, my cognitive achievements have justified my ugly, large brain. It is ugly and large, but with the right breeding partners, it can make children who look better than me and are more intelligent than their mother. Unless I can find a mother who has really cognitive genetics herself and talk her into crossbreeding with me, even though it would be like an act of vandalism because of her if she looks as perfect enough to keep me amused by admiring her all the time, then it's certainly going to be that any children created between us would never look as good as her. And they wouldn't be smarter either, because if she's got a huge brain volume, well, I can educate them and they would be very smart. But there's people who don't. A lot of people would say, we don't want that because you're bringing African genetics with you, and we already have a large enough brain volume. And I've explained why individuals are less important than groups in terms of their cognitive work. A lot of work gets done by groups. So individual cognitive work, it seems, is not necessarily as important as people assumed that it was. The work of an individual is not necessarily as important as the work of a group. So maybe progress can be moved along quite well enough by large groups of people whose brains are not as large. But there's a self-assembling aspect to scientific discovery and to the process of invention. It's like self-assembling. You find one thing is related to another, and then you find the relationship between them. And so knowing one of them helps you find the other, or knowing the other helps you find the first one. So that's the it's like a self-assembling, it's like a puzzle. You begin to assemble the pieces of a puzzle, and it gets less difficult as you move along. So groups of people can achieve things that are far beyond the intelligence of any one of them. So having a larger brain size and a stronger cognitive ability as an individual is not necessarily as important as the work of a group. So maybe, individuals might think of some things and contribute some things that are insightful that help the group along. So I think that Northern Europeans have been contributing some things, and I don't know whether Northern Europeans are required to keep everything from falling apart, or whether Northern Europeans are just on the periphery and we're just getting left behind by the great work that's occurring in East Asia. I don't know if there's Northern Europeans that are participating in that work, or whether the East Asians don't need our help. And if that's the case, then that takes away one of the biggest arguments in favor of having a large brain volume. Is if a group of people with a smaller brain volume can achieve as much or greater than one man can achieve, then it doesn't really matter so much if one person has a larger brain volume and has a more individual cognitive ability. So I'm looking for cognitive work that is requiring individual cognitive ability, and also is not so easily done by a group. And I'm having difficulty finding anything that I could do as an individual that could not be done by a group. Even better, by a group of men with smaller brains, men and women, if you like, a group of people with smaller brains. Is there anything that I can do that they cannot do? And it seemed that there was a lot of high level thinking that an individual could do that we would have expected a group could not do if they did not have one among them with an equally large brain and an equally complete education. But maybe that's not true in the digital age. Large numbers of men and women whose brains are smaller, large multitudes of them can be so well connected, by the digital network, that they can achieve things you wouldn't have expected them to achieve before the internet. And they actually achieved those things. They actually began to achieve those things before the internet. They invented the internet. Well, it looks like the Asians have been ahead for a long time. They have big industries, dense populations in China and in India, around China and in China and Vietnam and in India. And they have large populations. They're densely populated, and they are in a good climate and productive, agriculturally productive. So they have what I call a natural paradise climate in China, and also to some extent they have that in India. So China and India have a real strong economy, a real large population, and it seems like Northern Europeans, we thought we are the best at inventing, we are the technology people. Well, look at what they're achieving. The phone in my hand is made in China. And it was invented in China. And look at the Europeans, they're saying, oh yeah, we had a computer. Yeah, we had it during World War II. It was called the Colossus. It was made with vacuum tubes. Probably not. We had a computer. We invented things. Oh, look at our Wikipedia and look at our Encyclopedia Britannica. We invented everything. Yeah. Well, if we invented everything, then why does China know so much more about the periodic table of chemicals? They know more about the table of elements than we know. Our table of elements is less complete because their industries are bigger and they're pulling out elements that we could not accumulate enough quantity to even speak about the aspects of that element. And they know and we don't know. And that's not all. But that helped them to win the race to make the transistor and to make the first computer. But they were already making clocks and they were already making microscopes more and better than us. Wrist clocks, pocket clocks, wrist clocks. And before the computer, they were doing that. And then, yeah, they just have more bigger industries, more industry. They caught up and they passed us. And now they're just doing great work. And, well, I'm trying to find out if there's a level of mathematical literacy that I can attain that only I can attain and nobody else can really comprehend it. That's my wish. And nobody else with a equally, well, unless they have an equally large brain or they work an almost as large brain, and then they use some prescription amphetamine to enhance their sessions and they're persistent and they're well educated. I want to get to a level of mathematical literacy that people find difficult to achieve, but I'm not there yet. So I'm looking for evidence that my large brain is not completely useless in terms of whether a team of men with smaller brains can achieve more, and they've proven that they can. These are really large teams, but Northern Europeans have been contributing to them as well. But I hate to say it, they've been doing so much of it by themselves. And we've been congratulating ourselves and plagiarizing their accomplishments, and we've been putting it in our Encyclopedia Britannica and our Wikipedia. White men invented this, white men invented that. It looks like not. It looks like they invented it, but they didn't have enough. They had a small steel industry. Like they might have invented the combustion engine before us. They invented clocks, wrist clocks that were made. This is before computer clocks, before digital clocks. They made wrist clocks in Asia that were better than ours. And we said, well, our Swiss clocks are the best. Why would Swiss clocks be the best when the best clocks were made by nautical society, where they were making the first clocks were ship clocks? And I think that Switzerland hasn't got any coastline. But, you know, Switzerland is part of Germany. So if there's a nation that doesn't have coastal access, it's part of an adjacent nation which has coastal access. So there is no Switzerland. Switzerland is Germany. It's that simple. So Germany had some ships. Germany has some nautical history. Not the first ones in the water, but they eventually got into the water, and they eventually achieved a high level of Navy military proficiency during World War II with submarines and battleships. So the Germans, yeah, okay, Switzerland's part of Germany. So we'll just say they're not just a place in the mountains. Okay, Switzerland's not just a place in the mountains, but it wasn't. I think the clock was invented by a partnership of British and Japanese. All right, that's all for this video.